Hi, I'm John Atack.
I'm Sam Atack.
And Sam's going to start by reading out a little statement about mindfulness.
Dr. Miguel Farias at Oxford University, a practitioner of mindfulness, admits in the Buddha Pill that when two of his postgrad students analysed 4,000 articles on the subject, they found that only 30 of them met the criteria for a scientific study. He concludes, despite the anecdotal evidence on the effects of mindfulness meditation, and despite the hundreds of studies produced in the last 20 years, there was no robust scientific evidence that mindfulness has any substantial effect on our minds and behaviours.
No robust scientific evidence. And yet, we've been told repeatedly about the incredible amount of evidence that supports mindfulness. This is a mindfulness meditator who's I believe, a fellow at Oxford University and teaching graduate students, and he would love it to be true.
But 4,000 articles.
4,000 articles, only 30 of which met scientific criteria. Ronald Purser actually talks about 18,000 articles in his book, Mindfulness. We're going to talk about relaxation rather than mindfulness. I was on a plane, I was flying to Chicago, as we all sometimes do. And there was a lovely Armenian-American couple in their upper 70s. We were talking, and the man said that he and his wife had had 8 completely unnecessary surgical operations because they had such fantastic health insurance.
That doesn't seem to be right.
And then he looked at me and he said, but at least we don't have your socialist medical system. Now, he was talking about the National Health Service, which is not a socialist aspect. It's a way of caring for everyone. It came in with the Labour government of 1945.
Finding support from cradle to grave.
Support from cradle to grave. Now, what I would say is if you don't care for everyone in society, if you're not concerned with the health of everyone in society, then disease will pass from the poor to the rich. And we are in the midst of the coronavirus at the moment. And I suspect that even though our health system is terribly overstretched, it will probably cope better than the US because the US doesn't actually have a health system. It has, Medicare and all sorts of attempts to do that, and some very courageous and brave people who are willing to work without huge wages to help people. But we have free healthcare for everyone here. We don't have enough beds, and we don't have enough nurses and doctors because we introduced austerity after the bankers had stolen, or I should say the hedge fund managers, let's not tarnish all bankers here, Lehman Brothers and Goldman Sachs and other places, had stolen most of our money and somehow put it into their own bank accounts. Governments bailed them out. And then our government in the UK, under David Cameron, introduced austerity, which meant that we cut funding year by year on the National Health Service. It's been underfunded, therefore, for 12 years now. Doctors and nurses are overworked and underpaid. They always have been during my lifetime, but critically they don't get enough sleep. They're forced into shift patterns which are bad for their metabolism and often cause obesity because digestion is affected. With too few medical professionals and long waiting lists, untested methods are being brought into the system, and one of those is mindfulness. And it is as yet insufficiently tested. And it could be harmful to some people. It probably is. On that topic, perhaps Sam would read us. This comes from the National Health Service's own website, and it's a statement made by Professor Williams.
Mindfulness isn't the answer to everything, and it's important that our enthusiasm doesn't run ahead of the evidence. Yeah, I agree with that. Shall I read the other one?
Yep.
Research is still going on. Once we have the results, we'll be able to see more clearly who mindfulness is most helpful for.
Now, let's think about this in terms of a drug, that the idea that a drug is proposed that will help depression, anxiety, stress.
Yeah.
And we haven't bothered to test it yet.
Okay.
But the people who made it are very enthusiastic about it.
And they want to prescribe it to everyone.
Yeah. And you might sort of think, well, yeah, but sitting around staring at stuff and seeing how you feel about the raisin in your mouth and focusing on your mind, these surely can't be harmful. There can be no harm in this. Well, no. There is a condition called relaxation-induced anxiety, which sounds like a contradiction in terms, doesn't it?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
But I'm told that as many as 40% of people, if you set them down to meditate, which is the old-fashioned branding name for mindfulness, if you set them down to meditate, they will actually become more anxious. Before you were even a gleam in my eye, back in about 1991, the publisher Collins, now HarperCollins, commissioned me to write a book about transcendental meditation. And I spent 6 months exploring that. And I met people who had suffered terrible consequences from meditation. For example, a man who had tunnel vision, who he could see only within a narrow field, which lasted for some years. Thankfully, it did go away. I met him 20 years later, or 30 years later. This is almost 30 years later. This is terrible. I'm getting too old.
Breaking your coccyx, was that one of them?
One woman had broken her coccyx. That was on their levitational meditations. But people, I remember a woman who was an art dealer who was about the most anxious woman I've ever met, and told me how great transcendental meditation was, and that she'd been a practitioner for years, and this had brought her to this state of confusion and stress. So I do have some experience here, which leads me to be a bit cautious. However, there are some very good tips for relaxation on the National Health Service's website, which Mike will put a link to. And relaxation is certainly helpful and not a dangerous possibility, particularly with anxiety and stress. Now, it's very hard if you can't get something out of your mind, if it just obsesses you, that you're thinking about some dreadful thing that you're going to have to do or some dreadful thing that has happened to you. It's very difficult. It's a very good thing to have somebody that you can talk with. And the best choice would probably be a counsellor who was really well trained and knew what to say. But unfortunately, in our system, you will wait months before you can get onto a list to see somebody, and then you'll have a limited number of sessions. And that is because of underfunding. It's because not enough attention has been paid to healthcare. And what could be more important? So we recommend some simple relaxation. Comfortable clothing, soft lighting, a comfortable chair, or even, if I want to relax, I lie down on a mattress with a pillow under my head and 3 pillows under my knees so that I won't get cramp and I can lie there. But I don't meditate. I learned Zazen meditation in a monastery. Not a very exotic one, frankly, up in the north of England, but I did learn how it's properly done and been done by Zen and Chan and Dhyana practitioners for centuries. And I practiced meditation and I found it useful, but I was bothered by what's called the Ganzfeld effect. Do you want to explain the Ganzfeld effect today?
Okay, sure. When you stare at anything too long, you start to see things within it.
Why is that, do you think?
I'm not sure, actually.
Feedback in the brain, the necessity for something to be happening, because the brain is a predictive machine. It's looking for what's the future going to do. So if there's nothing there, it'll start putting something there. And the same is true if you sit in silence, you'll hear things. If you sit in darkness, you'll sense movement around you. And that's the brain's own feedback. Now, in meditation, you're pushing into that. And I'm not sure that that's tremendously helpful.
I mean, for me, that would probably induce some form of depersonalization if I did that for too long.
Yeah, where you no longer feel as if you are centered in yourself anymore. You feel kind of spread out a little bit. You can also get derealization, where the world around you seems unreal. So I recommend, therefore, that if you are going to sit or lie down comfortably, you play some gentle music. So there's some change happening that can keep you moving along. It is possible to over-focus and not really recommended. So what we're saying is go and have a look at the NHS website, which has some really good tips about relaxation. Be very cautious about mindfulness until such time as there is some evidence for it. I'd just like to point out that the National Institute for Health in the United States spent $23 million trying to validate transcendental meditation, and then in 2010 it gave up. That's after work that actually goes back into the 1960s. Benson's relaxation response was probably the best way to learn TM. But again, TM is where you repeat a word over and over and over to yourself, and what you'll achieve is a kind of euphoric state. Now, this is a mistake that's common even among counsellors. They feel that if it makes you feel better, it's good for you. Well, chocolate makes you feel better, and chocolate is probably good for you, actually. Cocaine, I'm told, makes people feel better, but apparently it's not very good for you. So therapy, counselling, what have you, is not about whether you feel high or blissed out or something like that, euphoric, or indeed in a hypnoid altered state, which can often happen with fixation of attention. It's about whether your relationships improve, whether you're doing better at work, doing better with your kids, which is, of course, the most important thing, whether you're better, within your family setting with your partner. That's what indicates whether something is working, not that you feel good about it. In these terms, there's a professor called Willoughby Britton, who is also a mindfulness practitioner. She's at Brown University. And she said, one of the things that'd be easy to show is the claim that mindfulness improves sleep. That'd be easy because you use a device called a polysomnograph, and you can see when somebody's asleep, how deeply they're sleeping and how often they wake up. To her surprise, she found that mindfulness meditators actually had lighter sleep, their sleep was not as good, and they woke up more often than the control group, which suggests that mindfulness is actually harmful, and it may be fundamentally harmful. But on the other hand, it says that those who practice it, it's like when you have a drink and you feel you're more aware. But in fact, you're not. Your awareness is diminishing with alcohol, but you feel disinhibited and, on top of the world.
So therefore, you can very easily become reliant on the technique if it's inducing a sense of euphoria. You can only get from that.
And I feel that, our society won't be helped by putting people into a kind of euphoric isolation where what they want to do, it's what I saw with some transcendental meditators. They'd spend 12 hours a day meditating and their kids would run wild. They would no longer have a job to go to because they were determined to get this bliss state. Well, that isn't really the purpose of our existence, I don't think. We're here as social creatures to create a better society. And those who wish to withdraw from society, that's fine. Good luck to you. But those who are most useful to society are those that help society and care about others. So we have antisocial people and we have non-social people. Good luck to them. We believe in being social, pro-social. So there you go. We think relaxation is the first stage rather than mindfulness. Good tips on the NHS website. Thank you very much for your time. I didn't mention, actually, the National Institute for Health not only spent $23 million researching transcendental meditation before it gave up 10 years ago, it's now spent $100 million on mindfulness and thus far produced no robust scientific evidence of its usefulness. So the studies should go on. They need to be scientifically a lot better than they are. But I think in the end we'll find that mindfulness is not a cure-all. It's useful for some people in some situations, but say it's being advocated for depression at the moment. And if somebody's already inward looking, which is an aspect of
Which is, of
depression,
course.
then teaching them how to amplify
Yeah,
that through
that's
mindfulness is a little bit silly. So I'm John Atack,
I'm Sam Haytak.
and thank you very much for your time.